Hello friends, hello lovers. Recently I embarked on a journey to answer one simple question in Hades. Can we beat the game using only the call? You see, call boons are really only meant to supplement your other attacks and not necessarily be the focus of your build in Hades. So forcing myself to use only them to win sounded like a reasonably difficult yet sane challenge. Or so I thought. In order to use your call boon, you must first build up your god gauge. And how do you build up your god gauge? Well, mostly by dealing damage using your attack, special, cast, and whatever else. But if we can't deal damage using other methods, how are we going to build up the gauge? Well, you can actually build up small amounts of your god gauge by taking damage as well. Thus, a plan began to formulate around how we would manage to survive taking enough damage every single chamber in order to clear the enemies. First, let's lay down some ground rules. 1. I can only use the following moves: dash, call, and summon. 2. I cannot damage enemies with dash or revenge boons since it would make the challenge significantly easier. 3. Traps are okay to damage enemies since it's practically unavoidable. 4. No mods whatsoever. So you can get boons for your attack, special, or cast if you need, as long as you don't actually use those moves. But you cannot get boons that would damage enemies in any way that aren't associated with your call boon. Boons like Dying Lament will injure enemies when you kill enemies around them. I decided to allow the summon since it seemed to still fit the spirit of the challenge and it helped get through the start of each attempt a lot faster. It was easy to decide to use Zeus's call to get through this challenge since it's easily the best call in the game, and it also sets up for a duo boon we highly desire for this. More on that later. I also decided to use Stubborn Defiance so that we get to revive once per chamber instead of having 3 for the entire run. This allowed us to take damage on purpose in order to build up our god gauge and get a little bit of health back every chamber. However, our health pool is significantly lower overall, and each chamber is just a little bit more dangerous now. We also used Aspect of Arthur to get the 50 additional starting HP and the Boldy summon since it drops food to recover health in case of emergency. With all those things equipped along with Zeus's keepsake to guarantee his boons, we set off and immediately encounter a problem. You see, you can't just get a call boon from the first chamber. The game is hard-coded to offer you 3 of 4 boons from the first god that you see: attack, special, cast, or dash. The only way to bypass this is to use your rerolls from Fated Authority. Rerolling boons looks past this limitation and can offer you any of the acquirable boons from the god, but you are limited. Eventually, I was able to start where I spent 3 of our 4 rerolls and got an epic Zeus call in the first chamber. Using this many rerolls for it is definitely not ideal. And just as quick as we solve one problem, we immediately have another. Getting past these early few chambers is just a pure nightmare. I'm forced to take damage from the enemies to build up the god gauge, but it's just so damn slow. It was to the point that we decided to turn on the Pact of Punishment that increases enemies' attack speed by 40%. This could potentially make dangerous situations much more difficult, but would ease a lot of the pain at the start of these attempts. I also had to make use of the traps as much as possible to kill enemies, otherwise I simply didn't have the health to keep taking damage to build up the god gauge. It was a real struggle to get through these chambers, and it was obvious we wouldn't last long once the enemies have more health and I ran out of summons to replenish ours. Despite the frustrations, we finally hit a big milestone and reached our first shop, and it turns out it has the exact thing we're looking for: Hermes. Through a bit of luck, we managed to score Hermes' boon, Quick Favor, after 1 reroll. At epic rarity, Quick Favor fills your god gauge by 1% every second. This means that we'll be able to use our call boon every 25 seconds or so. Even with this boon, it's difficult to have the patience and endurance to slowly get through these chambers with lots of enemies, but it's a huge step in the right direction. We set off again and pick up an Athena boon and hop into a Chaos Gate. I chose Chaos because the other room rewards weren't amazing, and the idea of not having to fight any enemies for just 1 chamber even was just too enticing. There was also a chance to get additional max health from Chaos, but that didn't happen, so I just took a boon that didn't really change the run. At this point, I had 1 reroll still, but I knew we had to save it for the right time. Next, we bump into Thanatos and decide to let him win before heading into the final shop before the Furies. I decide to pass on Artemis since the only boon she has that would help us is pressure points, which just isn't quite what we need right now. Money is tight and I need to make sure I have plenty to get boons from gods that we're looking for and to refill our health. Electo gave us quite a bit of trouble, but we were able to eventually take her down after about a 3-minute fight. I got down to only 17 health at one point before summoning Boldy, so it was a really close call. On our way to Asphodel, I purchased another summon and swapped Keepsake to Aphrodite's. The reason we want to get a boon from Aphrodite is because we really want the duo boon between her and Zeus. I knew that if we didn't get that before the end of Asphodel, there was a decent chance we weren't going to survive the run. Luckily, Aphrodite appeared as the reward for the first chamber of Asphodel and gave us her cast boon, thus opening up the potential for getting the duo boon if we see either her or Zeus afterward. After that, we scored big time and were able to visit Eurydice, who gave us refreshing nectar, increasing the rarity of the next 3 boons that we get. The nectar also increases the odds of getting duo boons offered. The enemies in Asphodel aren't really any less annoying than in Tartarus, even though they can be damaged by the magma. Their AI is such that they try very hard to avoid it. Nevertheless, it helped pass the time while waiting for the god gauge to build up via quick favor. I grab an epic side hustle from Hermes and nearly cream myself when I see who's on the door. Aphrodite. This was our opportunity to get the boon of our dreams, but first we had to survive the Barge of Death. My health dropped all the way down to 29 by the end, with 1 green bomber nearly ending the run. But we managed to survive to grab exactly what we needed: Smoldering Air. This duo boon, like Quick Favor, also charges your god gauge automatically over time, but instead of 1% every second, you get it every 0.2 seconds. This increases the speed at which we can use our call boon drastically. The boon also caps our god gauge at 25% or a single use at a time, but that isn't really much of a downside in this circumstance. It was at this point that I was fairly confident that the run was won. We grab a trial between Zeus and Athena and manage to pick up Static Discharge, which will increase our call boon damage tremendously. Athena also gives us an epic Proud Bearing, but truthfully, it wasn't that important since we already had Smoldering Air and Quick Favor. The shop then offers us yet another Zeus boon where we managed to snag Double Strike, increasing our call damage even further. Lerny went down like nothing. For Elysium, we put on Skelly's Tooth for safety since it allows us to res 1 extra time in case we hit trouble. Elysium was definitely annoying with the respawning souls, but with everything in our arsenal, we were never in any real danger. They just waste our time. We grab a few palms and boons and make our way to the heroes. Now is a good time to mention why Zeus's call is so good. The call itself deals decent enough damage, but it's actually the follow-up boons that Zeus offers that really empower it above the rest. Boons like Static Discharge and Double Strike turn it into an absolute powerhouse, and no other god really has the ability to get to the same level. Anyway, the heroes went down like nothing. For Styx, we left on Skelly's Tooth and head out. We were able to grab an epic Billowing Strength before heading into the tunnels. We got to see Zeus's beautiful face one last time to try to get the legendary boon from him, but alas, we settled for High Voltage to increase our lightning AoE. And with that, we're on to Daddy. Truthfully, we already knew that this fight was going to be easy. We got almost everything we could possibly want when we wanted it throughout the run. It required an insane amount of luck, but I had a lot of fun trying to figure out how to go about tackling this challenge. It wasn't like other Hades runs, it actually required a lot more planning and setup in order to solve it, and sometimes we had to think a bit differently from how we would when we normally play the game. So if you got any other cool challenge ideas of your own, please let me know in the comments. Anyway, thanks for watching. By the way, Daddy went down like nothing. Wow, we did it, chat. I'm shocked. I'm shocked. Woo! It was an interesting thought experiment, I think. Just determining what do we need, how do we do it. And it made us think a little bit differently about the game and what needed to have happen, right? It's cool.